Welcome back to Indianapolis, where we're broadcasting live as we get ready for Super Bowl 46. 3 days from now, we're getting close to this game here. I'm Mark Hale with Mike Vaccaro, our elite sports columnist. There were questions about Eli Manning being elite. There's no question that you're elite.
Thank you, Coach Belichick. I appreciate
that. So we talked earlier today, obviously, with Brian Costello and Paul Schwartz about some of the news of the day. And first of all, right off the bat, there is some news with the Patriots. Rob Gronkowski practicing on a limited basis for the first time this week. Look, we all thought this guy was going to play. Nobody thought he was going to miss this game. I mean, are you starting to think that, there's a lot to read into today's practice, that he might be doing better, or do you feel like we know as much today as we knew yesterday, even though we practiced?
Yeah, I mean, I never put a lot of stock in the injury reports. It's something that teams do because they have to do, especially that team.
Okay.
I mean, the Patriots for the longest time had Tom Brady with a shoulder injury, which may or may not have been real.
Even though he was playing every week.
Even though he was playing every week and playing pretty well every week.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, we're not going to know about Gronkowski until Sunday, neither the Patriots. I mean, we'll see what happens the first time he's got to make a route, the first time he's got a cut on that ankle, first time he's got to move upfield once he catches the ball. And then we'll see, and then they'll see. And for now, I think it's good for the Giants to just have an idea that he's definitely going to play. That's one issue they can bury. They probably had that buried anyway. They figured he was going to play. Look, nobody missed a Super Bowl. I mean, people have played Super Bowls on broken legs before.
We saw that with Terrell Owens.
And we saw it with Terrell Owens before, and he contributed that game. So,
Yep.
I mean, I'm pretty certain that Gronkowski will contribute. The idea is to what extent. Obviously, he's an important part of what they do, a very important part of what they do. And if he can be that this Sunday, it really alters the way that the Giants are going to look at the game.
No doubt. I mean, one of the amazing things about the Patriots also is, Rob Gronkowski's phenomenal. The other guy they got, Aaron Hernandez, he's certainly better than any tight end the Giants have, and he's one of the elite tight ends in the league as well.
Right. I mean, the tandem is what makes them so special because, I mean, I can't think of another team ever that's had two players that are that much a part of the offense as Hernandez and Gronkowski. But you know what? Even if they have to learn on the fly, they have a quarterback who's pretty good at improvising if need be.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit about, the last time these teams played in the Super Bowl 4 years ago back. You covered that game out in Arizona. And, one of these kind of unsung plays, we always talk about the David Tyree, catch, the Plaxico Burress touchdown catch to win the game. One of the most unsung plays of that game came on that final drive and didn't have anything to do with the pass, did it?
No, it didn't. And it's funny because the one Achilles heel that seems to plague the Giants week after week this year is their third and short, fourth and short capabilities or lack thereof.
Right.
And really the play that almost defines that drive is Brandon Jacobs getting about 2 feet on fourth and short. And not just the fact that they got it, but the fact that, in talking to the guys who were in the middle of that play, the idea that they knew they were going to get it. They felt confident they were going to get it. And the thing that they talked about is that despite all their shortcomings this year on third and fourth and short, that they believe that if need be, clearly they've shown that they can get a yard when they absolutely have to have it. And that's going to be in the back of their mind if there's a similar situation on Sunday.
Absolutely. Jacobs possibly playing in his final game as a Giant, too. We all know that what his situation is with the salary that he's due for next season. There's so many kind of hidden stories in this week beyond the Brady and the Eli Manning and the Gronkowski and the Antrell Rolls of the world. And one of those stories kind of came to light today with Tyler Sash in the column that you wrote today. Tyler Sash, for you guys who don't know, rookie safety for the Giants out of Iowa, plays a lot on special teams, and kind of an interesting story with what he's going through with one of his friends.
Brett Greenwood was the guy who hosted him on his campus visit 4 years ago at Iowa. They're both Iowa kids, very similar backgrounds, and they hit it off immediately and played together 3 years in the defensive backfield at Iowa. Both became all Big Ten players. Greenwood was the last cut of the Steelers in August or early September, and 5 days later when he was working out at his house, or it was in his hometown at Pleasant Valley High School, he collapsed of a heart attack and was in a coma for 42 days. And so that's the kind of thing that Sash has been playing with all year, kind of a heavy heart. Obviously, he can't be with his friend because he's got business at hand. He was able to get back to Iowa City, where the university is located, to have a fundraiser for him. Just something that he threw together in about 15 minutes that he hoped to raise a couple $100, and they wound up raising $2,000, which is more than the money. Was just kind of shows the impact that these guys had when they were at Iowa and how much they care about each other. So he's excited about playing Sunday because he says he's not just playing for himself, now he's playing for two.
Absolutely. Obviously, you guys can read that column that Vac wrote for today on nypost.com. I think one of the interesting things, and this was another thing that we had in the paper today, is another guy who played in that 2007 championship game, Michael Strahan. Actually, his last game as a Giant was that day. He was a legendary player for this team. 4 years have gone by. That number 92 has not been retired by the Giants, and there's actually a chance they might not retire any more numbers because they'll just honor guys with that Ring of Honor. What do you think about that? You've covered this, you've been with this team for a long time. You saw probably a pretty good amount of Strahan's games. What do you think about this kind of whole thing with Strahan and the retired numbers?
Yeah, you know what? There's a gaping hole in some of our New York sports teams. I've always thought that the Knicks should retire number 30 for Bernard King. I've always thought the Mets should retire number 17, number 8. Several other numbers could easily be retired for the Mets. I think there's really going to be a gaping hole if Strahan's 92 isn't retired, because not only was he a great player, probably going to be a Hall of Famer within a couple of years, but he was a Super Bowl winning player, and he was really the heart and soul of that team.
Absolutely.
I understand that there comes a moment, so sometimes you get silly. I mean, the Yankees are going to run out of numbers eventually when they start retiring these modern guys' numbers. I understand that. I understand that they think the Ring of Honor is a more prominent honor now. But you know what? 92, it's a number that's going to be associated with him forever. The next guy who wears it, it's going to look weird on him.
Yeah, and no one has worn it.
No one has worn it.
Clearly, they're able to field the team.
Right.
With number 2
you only need 53 numbers, and they've only retired 4, 5, or 6. So they certainly can retire it. And like I said, I mean, it's, in the same way to me, it was always weird to see players in the Knicks wearing number 30 or Mr. Koo wearing number 17 for the Mets. I think it'd be strange to have the next wannabe defensive lineman and ask for 92 because it's Strahan's number.
Absolutely, and even the possibility that they might not retire any more numbers. I think at some point it's going to be hard to imagine someone else wearing number 10 for the Giants as well, even if that's not retired.
Well, even if Fran Tarkenton wore it with distinction 35 years before Eli did. No, you're right. Look, I mean, I think also you could argue no one's going to wear 16 again because Frank Gifford not only was an iconic football player, but he's an icon in a lot of other ways too. And I think that by the time he's done, I mean, I think Strahan's not going to be isn't going anywhere. You're going to see him every Sunday probably for the next 20 years. So he's going to be a guy who's going to be forever, identified as number 92. And he does Subway commercials and all this other stuff. So I do think, like, I understand if maybe now you want a grandfather, then maybe after Eli, after Strahan. In the same way,
imagine this team not being celebrated like that.
Yeah, and in the same way, it would be odd to see anybody else wear number 56, number 11. I mean, I do agree that teams should be selective with whose numbers they retire. I don't think that necessarily Ron Guidry's number should be retired or whatever for the Yankees, but I do think that certain iconic figures merit that, and I think that Strahan is one, and definitely Eli is going to be another one.
Last thing, let's talk a little bit about the GM for the Giants, Jerry Riesvac, and it's a very strange season for this guy. Obviously, we know about the criticism he received last summer, and now obviously we've seen what this team has been. This is a guy who 3 days from now might be celebrating his second championship as general manager in 5 years. Being that the GM of the Giants, I'm wondering if Jerry Reese has almost become the best GM in town, in New York. I mean,
I think he's certainly in the conversation, and I think that he's if he wins a second championship in 5 years, it's going to be hard to keep out of the conversation in the NFL. It's pretty funny, Mark. 5 years ago, I'd written to fire Tom Coughlin. The next year, I wrote a mea culpa in the newspaper saying, you know what, I was wrong. I'm glad to actually sometimes once in a while say that I was wrong. Right. It's obviously a good thing he wasn't fired. So in the same token, I remember this summer when Reese was taking all this criticism, I didn't join that bandwagon because, look, his track record across his first couple of years as a general manager, beginning with that Super Bowl year and moving on, I mean, he had the best general manager's record of anybody in franchise history.
Right. Has not had a losing record.
And so my point in August was, you know what, let's see if he's wrong. Maybe he's not wrong. And clearly, there was a point in the season where people were probably saying that 6-6, 7-7. Well, you know what, we were right.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for anybody to keep him off their shoulders if they win again because, obviously what he decided to do, the way that the Giants decided to go about their offseason was the right thing, and it was hard for them. It had to be hard because right across town you had the Jets who were picking up players, including an iconic Giant.
Yes.
And in their own division, they had the Eagles, who every couple of hours were signing a prominent free agent, including one of their own. So it couldn't have been easy for them to sit by, but they had a plan. They stuck to it, and I think that's in the same way that we shook our heads in 2007, that every one of his draft picks from his first draft had a prominent part on that team. I think we're going to look at it now and say, you know what, he was smart to keep the cards he kept and to play the cards and to let go some of the players he did, and look where they are. Even if they don't win, you can't argue with what his plan was because they're the only one of only two teams playing.
Absolutely, and it's been impressive. I mean, 2009, they drafted 29th in draft. Hakeem Nicks, they get 29. Last year, 2010, They're drafting, I think it was 15. They get Jason Pierre-Paul. You could argue that Jason Pierre-Paul is the best player in that draft.
Yeah.
And you could argue that Hakeem Nicks at 29 is the best receiver in that draft.
Yeah, if you hold those two drafts over again, I think both those teams, well, so certainly JPP is going to be a top 3.
Yeah.
Knicks could be a top 10, and I think that that you clearly, that's clearly a testament to not just Reese, but the entire front office, but certainly Reese is the guy who ultimately has to be accountable for those selections.
Last thing for you, since we're not going to have you on tomorrow, we want to get your Super Bowl pick for Sunday.
Well, it's funny because I know that the Giants have gained momentum, and it's been hard for me to not see a parade next Tuesday. But there's just something about Belichick and Brady and the redemption tour they're on.
Yeah.
I have a hard time seeing them, allow this opportunity to pass by them. As terrific as the Giants are, and as much momentum as they're on, the Patriots have won 10 games in a row.
Yes.
And it really, I think ultimately it came down to that. I think it's going to be a very close game. I think it's going to be a pretty high-scoring game. My pick's 30-27 Patriots. And before anybody riots, I hope I'm wrong with that one, like I was with Coughlin a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I'm going a 3-point game as well. And sorry, Giants fans, I'm going Patriots. I'm going the exact reverse score of Super Bowl 42. This time I'll go 17-14 Patriots in Super Bowl 46. We'll talk to you a lot more, obviously, live from Indianapolis tomorrow morning. We'll be back with Brian and Paul, and then late in the afternoon we'll have Mark Cannizzaro joining us live from Indy as well. We'll talk to Vac, obviously, later after the Super Bowl. Going to thank you guys for watching. For Mike, I'm Mark. Talk to you soon.